was an interesting conversation between Stephen A. Smith and Chris Wallace, and it had to do with the increased support that Trump is enjoying in this election cycle among young black voters. So while Kamala Harris has managed to increase her support among black voters overall, polling still suggests that Donald Trump has held on to his increased support among young black males. Now, according to the latest Morning Consult poll, which was published this week, they found that Harris has a 60-point lead among black voters, with 78% backing her and about 18% picking Trump. Now, obviously, Kamala Harris has a bigger lead among black voters, that's clear. But it's also clear that according to not just this poll, but several polls, Donald Trump has managed to increase his support among young black male voters. So just for comparison's sake, let's take a look at what happened in 2020. So black voters remained overwhelmingly loyal to the Democratic Party in 2020, voting 92% for Biden and 8% for Donald Trump. But keep in mind that Donald Trump in that election had increased his support among black voters and Latino voters, by the way. And so Biden's share of votes by black people actually ended up decreasing by 3 percentage points compared to Hillary Clinton in 2016. Okay, so Democrats keep losing support among black voters, and if you want to like even be even more precise, the demographic is young black males. Okay, so you guys get the point.
Hey, don't scroll away. Come back. Because before the video continues, we just want to urge you to lend your support to TYT. You power our honest reporting. You do it at tyt.com/team, and we love you for it.
Now, with that in mind, Chris Wallace asked Stephen A. Smith, like, what do you think is happening here? Why do you think Trump is doing relatively well with young black men? And Stephen A. Smith responds and says, I think that it's a combination of the disgust and the absence of trust that an abundance of people, not just black males, but an abundance of people in America have with Capitol Hill. All right, so I want to pause right there, because I think he really did hit the nail on the head. I think that Donald Trump is the middle finger manifested in human form. And I think that the individuals who support him, they might support him for other reasons as well, but I do think that one of the dominant reasons is that it's giving a middle finger to our political establishment, to our institutions. And a lot of Americans feel like those institutions and the political establishment has let them down, whether we're talking about the Democratic establishment or the Republican establishment.
Yeah, I think Stephen A. Smith nailed it.
Yeah.
And I don't often say that. So, and he's way more conservative than I am, as far as I can tell based on his public comments. But I think he's right about this one. And it's the Democrats playing with fire. They never delivered, they never delivered, they never deliver. And then they just keep asking for your votes. And at some point, it's going to catch up with you. In a sense, they're lucky because their opponent is so over the top. He's talking about how immigrants are eating cats and dogs. She's running against a literal lunatic and barely winning. She has a 1-point lead in Wisconsin, and if she loses that, she loses the whole election. Mm-hmm. I mean, that shows you how much the American people are sick of the Democratic Party and the establishment. So if you're a Democrat, like if that hurts your feelings, I hear you, brothers and sisters, but we as a party have to do better, right? Like if you can't just go, I blame the American people. No, they're experiencing it. Like so, and I say this because look, I know tons of people who think, what do you mean? Biden gave us 10% positive change, and I didn't need any change. And all of a sudden, I got a gift of an extra 10% of positive change. That's amazing. He's like FDR. But when you need 100% change, 10% ain't gonna do it. It's a matter of perspective. For people who are wealthy, people who are doing well, they think, what more do you want, right? But for the average American, a lot more, because corporate rule has been taking and taking and taking from us. And that's not what the establishment doesn't realize or doesn't wanna know.
High inflation, high interest rates. Like you can talk about specific legislation that Biden managed to pass, but you could also talk about the promises that Biden made but failed to keep. And when it comes to the day-to-day, in terms of what Americans are experiencing, it is the inflation, it is the high interest rates, which are now starting to come down. Federal Reserve lowered interest rates by 50 basis points yesterday. And so we're gonna head in that direction because inflation has slowed, but a huge portion of Biden's term was dealing with this high inflation, and Americans are pissed about it. They're mad about it. And so you could talk about the CHIPS Act, you could talk about the infrastructure bill, but again, what is the lived experience day to day of ordinary Americans?
Yeah, and here's another thing that's super important. The average American doesn't know and doesn't care about the parliamentarian or the filibuster. So when you said to them that you were going to do voting rights for African Americans, and then you barely even tried and it went nowhere, we didn't even have a debate over it, it was just gone, right? It looks like you weren't even trying. When you told everybody, hey, if you're an average guy here and you're just starting or you're struggling and you're getting minimum wage, we're gonna get you $15 minimum wage. They actually believed you. Yeah. And then when Biden took that out first bill, first thing he did was take out minimum wage. He was lying all along. So if you do lie after lie after lie, you don't even deliver paid family leave, that polls at 84%. Yeah. I mean, how ridiculous are you?
Also, allowing the child tax credit to expire, that's a real financial benefit in people's lives that has been taken away.
Yeah, and that leads to guys not just being disappointed with Biden or the current Democratic Party or even Kamala Harris as part of the administration. It leads to them not believing you.
Right.
So when you come and you say, oh, this time I'm gonna do minimum wage, and this time I'm gonna do a bigger child tax credit, and this time I'm gonna raise corporate taxes. That's what you said last time, and you didn't even try any of those things. You did the child tax credit for 1 year. It was a spectacular success. It lowered child poverty by about 50%. It was one of the most stunning government programs ever, and then you took it away.
Yeah.
Oh, but the parliamentarian wouldn't let me pass. Get the hell out of here. It has nothing to do with that. Your corporate donors wouldn't let you pass.
Where there's a will, there's a way. But Stephen A. Smith also continued to talk about how it's not just the message that Donald Trump is delivering to the political elites, the political establishment, and our institutions. It's the way in which he's delivering that message. He says, listen, when it comes to Donald Trump, he speaks a lot of folks' language. They don't care as much about the message. They care about how he's delivering the message because he delivers it in a way that they want to deliver it to Capitol Hill. So we've talked about this before in different contexts, right? So in this case, it's the harsh message to the political elites, but it's also the simple common man way that he communicates. And I do think that resonates with some voters. Now, who does Stephen A. Smith think will actually ultimately win the election? Well, he's very clear. He says, I still believe it's going to be Kamala Harris that's going to win this election. Wallace asks, really? And he says, I really do. I think she's going to win this election because I think that when you take away the fringes, folks on the fringe, on the extreme right and left, and you get to the center, I think ultimately people are going to look at her, regardless of what they're saying about her, they're going to look at her and say, you can work with her. And finally, he says, and the way of the streets of America were
when he departed.
Okay, so he's basically talking about like, look, people don't want to go back to what they experienced, especially in like the final year of Donald Trump. You have the coronavirus pandemic, you have all of this chaos, you have all of this instability. People aren't going to want to go back to that. So he believes that ultimately people will get out the vote for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, and of course, January 6th. He said 2020, but he was referring to the last days of Trump as well. And so people don't want to go back to that madness where if the guy loses, he says, destroy democracy, bring in the fake electors, show them how strong you are at the Capitol, et cetera. All that madness. God, isn't it going to be an incredible relief when this Trump guy's finally out of our lives? Oh my God, the guy's such a clown that even if he gets clowned this time and loses, maybe he's not out of our lives. Maybe he'll try again. And maybe MAGA is so insane that they'll nominate him again. I don't know.
Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that what you just said is very common among Democrats, right? They think that the real problem is Donald Trump, and once he's gone, everything will be okay again. But it's not just Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a symptom, okay? the Republican voters favor Trump. It's the Republican voters who have, I mean, he didn't even have to participate in the primary debates. So they're going to look for a future candidate who is like Donald Trump.
Yeah, I just, that's 100% right. It's just that it's hard to replicate the mania of Trump.
That's true.
Right, in both in terms of the way he speaks to people and animates them, and so in order to get that kind of energy, so that's a downside for the Republicans, that he'll be hard to replace in that way. But also the mania of like just like almost psychological terrorism, where he's such a loose cannon. You don't know what the hell he's going to do on any given day. Every day you wake up, did he launch? Is his button bigger than North Korea? Is he going to launch there? Is he going to cause a war in the Middle East? Is he going to wreck the economy? Is he going to, is he going to nuke a hurricane? What the hell is he going to do, right? Because he's so mentally unstable. So Josh Hawley or JD Vance or Vivek Ramaswamy might be faux populist, right? And they might lead in the wrong direction, but it's hard for them to replicate that same kind of mania that Trump has, that is so unnerving.
I can agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
And then last thing is Stephen A. Smith is also right about the way he speaks, and this is another thing that the Democrats and the establishment, the media, don't understand at all. They can't get it through their heads. Who's better at speaking to the average American, Donald Trump or Adam Schiff?
Oh, come on.
No, in Washington, Adam Schiff would win like 97-3.
I mean, snooze fest. People,
right.
Like no one's interested, okay?
And if you're like a diehard Democrat, especially if you're really well educated, you're like, what do you mean? Adam Schiff speaks just like my professors in school.
Okay, but people don't want to hear your professors in school. People want to hear a message that resonates with them. Remember, what got George W. Bush elected in, was it 2000? 2000.
Yeah.
It was because he was the kind of guy that they can see themselves having a beer with.
Yeah, even though he was an alcoholic who stopped drinking, but yeah.
Okay, but you guys get the point.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.